Well, I'm back. Are you guys still here? Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Rob. I don't know what was going on there. Everything was fine, but you know what? That's the podcasting life for you, right? Everything is fine 1 minute and chaos the next. But I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Happy Friday. Hopefully, you guys are all having a good morning. Good to see you, Linda and Rob. So early in the morning. Good morning, Mandy. Good to see you also. That little intro I played for hopefully you guys caught that before my camera messed up. Well, that was the new ICE video that's out. You can find that on their ICE X page as well as some other places. Good morning, Lori. Happy Friday to you all as well. I don't know about you guys, but I am really happy it's Friday. I am really happy it's Friday. It's been a really long week for me. I had to work a big screening of Superman on Monday. We've been doing security for the cast of a film called what is that called? Soul on Fire. That took up some time this week, and it's been a really busy week. Next week, who knows what's coming? Who knows? But it's probably gonna be busy as well. It's gonna be hot. Make sure you guys really take extra precaution today. I'm hearing that the heat index is going to be over 100 degrees, which is just crazy. I love hot weather, but when it's over 100 degrees, that's exceptionally hot, especially for people who have any health conditions and again, that's the heat index, but it's going to be a very, very hot day. Good morning, Karen. Hope you're well. Good morning, Glesna from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Hopefully, it's a little cooler where you are because it's going to be quite warm for us here today. Lots to talk about today, as always, outside of it being a Friday. I don't know what you guys have planned this weekend. I know I plan on doing some gardening. I might get out Saturday night and meet a couple friends out. I can't even remember the last time I was out, like socially out somewhere. It's been a really long time. I mean, it's been months. I'm too busy to even think about it. But I might just take a little time out. We'll see how that goes. But I've still, I don't know about you guys, but I've got a ton of work to do in the garden. I try to get out there, in the evenings because it's just been so hot. I have to work, like everybody else during the day. So I'm just too busy and sometimes in the evening too. But I try to get out and weed. I've got some grass growing in a patch in the garden right now. That's, I kid you not, like 6, 10 inches long. So I've got to get out there and get those weeds out. Good morning, Michelle. And good morning, Ruth. You're watching on YouTube. Yeah, I haven't done much with YouTube. I need to kind of ramp things up over there. I always figured I wouldn't last this long on YouTube. And did you view what O'Reilly said? I didn't. I don't think, Ruth, because I don't have that in my notes today. So please be sure to post that if you can, because I'm not sure what O'Reilly said. Good morning, Kim. And Ruth, when you post that and let us know, I will read it. I will be keeping an eye out for that because I don't know. But I'll tell you, there's a lot going on. I know I personally, a lot of people have been just bashing Donald Trump, President Trump, over some of the decisions that he's made lately. And, it is upsetting. I'm upset about it. I'm trying to focus on the good. My blood like comes to a boiling point every once in a while. And I'm like, all right, I just got to let it go. There's nothing else I can do. I know we've talked a lot about the Epstein case I saw this morning where they said that the FBI has ended the case against Prince Andrew and his ties to Jeffrey Epstein because all of the people who were under review, anyone who had a pending case related to the Epstein files, guess what? Those cases have been dropped. So I'm very curious about Ghislaine Maxwell and what's going to happen with her. I mean, who did she traffic people to? Or are we going to is the state or going to drop, or the I guess in this case the Fed's going to drop the case against Ghislaine Maxwell? I mean, they should. If there are apparently no victims and there's no perpetrators, why is she sitting in jail? Good morning, Joe Lynette. And Michelle says, so do I. I just finished getting my onions pulled. Steak tomatoes today. And yeah, we'll till and fertilize. Michelle, I'm with you. I've got to stake up my tomatoes today. I've got the posts and I got to run through with the wire, or not the wire, but the twine, and keep them up. I've got a ton of tomatoes growing, but I've got to get those staked up today too, or they're going to be on the ground. Then nobody's going to have any tomatoes around here. And so the Epstein case is baffling to me. And of course, we all have so many ideas. People message me all day long with ideas. Well, he's making deals. Yes, he probably absolutely is using the information to make deals, of course. But that's my number one theory, like I said yesterday, is that Donald Trump has those Epstein files. He has seen some very prominent people within those files, and he's using those files to make deals. Now, some people think the deals he's making is to make sure that Democrats allow him to pass whatever type of executive orders or legislation that he wants. Now, I don't know about that because they're already kicking back about a lot of different things. So I'm not sure about that. A lot of people believe he might be making deals, for world peace or to get the Nobel Peace Prize or any number of different things. But in the end, what I worry about is that yes, I'm sure Donald Trump has figured out a way to make sure that we're more secure in our country because of these files. He probably saw this as an amazing opportunity. What files he was able to get, I should say. And we don't know how many files were held back or destroyed before they made it to him. But I do believe those files did make it to Pam Bondi's desk. That woman would not have been so excited and so confident had she not had those files and looked through those files and those names. But there are no more pending cases. There's no more investigations. But what concerns me the most is that regardless of any type of deals that Donald Trump might have made, the fact is there were still victims. We know there were victims. There still were pedophiles who are now not going to be charged or investigated. Trafficking not charged, not investigated. And I feel like those are big principles here in our country, and something we voted for and fought hard for was that we would take predators, child predators, human traffickers off the streets. They would belong in jail, and it wouldn't matter how elite they were or who they were. And I was talking to you guys yesterday about the list that was released on the dark web. And I took a better look at that list last night, and it kind of went along with one other statement that Donald Trump had made, in which he stated, and I'm not sure, I can't recall who he stated this to, but he made a statement that he didn't want to release the information because it would hurt too many people. He was concerned that there's a lot of names on that client list. So obviously he has seen the list. He has seen the list. So there is a list. I don't know why they're trying to gaslight us and tell us there's no list. There is a list. So Donald Trump has seen the list, and he has said that it would hurt too many people to reveal that list because there's a lot of people on that list that may have just had lunch with Epstein or dinner or a casual conversation, and maybe we're not involved in the trafficking or the assaults or anything else. And if the list I saw posted on the dark web is the real list, I don't know if it is or is not. There were an awful lot of names on there, a lot of Hollywood folks, a lot of actors and actresses. And it could be that Jeffrey Epstein just associated with those people because he was starstruck. I don't know. It doesn't list how he knows those people, what association. Some of them it would say, well, these people worked for his good friend, or these people worked in his house or on the island. There were people named like that, but some notables though that I didn't see on there. Donald Trump's name was not on that list, provided that it's a real list. We have no way to confirm that. And surprisingly enough, RFK Jr.'s name was on that list. And again, that doesn't mean anything. It's probably not a real list. Joe Biden's name was on that list, and Obama's name was not. And I'm trying to think, there was somebody else. Oh, people always talk about Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks' name was not on that list. Bill Gates was. Peggy says Barron Trump shared the list on X. Oh, did he? I did not know that. Probably the same list that I saw. And Lori says, are you able to name some of them? Curious. Yeah, I can name some of them. It'll take me a couple of minutes. Let's see. Good morning, Joe. And Joe Lynette says, I wonder if all the Epstein stuff is just a psyop to find and root out the leakers and clear the deep state. Maybe. Oh, and Dottie, I think you said feed magnesium every 2 weeks to prevent blossom and rot. Dottie, yesterday I went through my garden and I did exactly that. I have some cow mag. I went through the garden and sprayed down all of my tomatoes and my peppers. I wasn't going to read this list just because I don't know if it's real, but I do have the list here and I can just go through some of these. Some of them are police detectives, names you won't know. Some of these names won't surprise you. Alan Dershowitz. I don't want to get sued. That's why I'm trying to be careful. I want to make it very clear to you, that there is no way to confirm that this list is real. There's no way to confirm this. This could have been just some random person sitting down writing names against people they just don't like. I'll read the names to you, but I don't know. Again, I don't want to be in any type of defamation lawsuit because I am not saying these people had anything to do with Epstein. I have no way to know that. Good morning, Sandy. And so I'm going to read the list to you. John Connolly, he's a New York police detective. Alan Dershowitz, of course, he's an attorney. He represented Epstein in 2006. Leonardo DiCaprio, Al Gore, Richard Branson, Stephen Hawking. This who I'm not sure I'm saying this right. Ehud or who? Barak is the former Israeli prime minister. Let's see here. Michael Jackson, Marvin Minsky, he's a artificial intelligence pioneer. Kevin Spacey, George Lucas, Jean-Luc Brunel, who is a French model agency boss, and it says alleged co-conspirator with Epstein. Oh, we have Kate Blanchett, Naomi Campbell, Heidi Klum, Sharon Churcher, who is a British journalist. It says Bruce Willis, Bianca Jagger. Oh, Bill Richardson, who is, it says, the former governor of New Mexico, Cameron Diaz. Eva Anderson Dubin, who says is the former Miss Sweden. Glenn Dubin, which is Miss Sweden's husband. Noam Chomsky, he's a political philosopher. Tom Pritzker, of course. No surprise there. Chris Tucker, Sarah Ferguson, of course, Prince Andrew's former wife. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., James Michael Ostrich, Juan and Maria Alessi, their husband and wife. They worked at the Epstein home in Florida. Janus Banasiak, not sure who that is, somebody who was Epstein's Palm Beach house manager. Bella Klein, no idea who she is. Let's see here. Leslie Groff, no idea who that is, a former Epstein secretary. Victoria Bean, Rebecca Boylan, Dana Burns, Bill Gates, Ron Eppinger, Daniel Estes, Louis Freeh, who was the former director of the FBI, Frederick Fekkai, celebrity hairstylist, Alexandra Fekkai, who was his son, Jojo Fontanella, Epstein's butler, Doug Brand, longtime Bill Clinton aide, Bill Clinton, of course, Hillary Clinton, Prince Andrew, Eric Gainey, no idea who that is, Meg Marvin, Virginia Guffrey, we know she was there, Sheridan Gibson Butt, no idea who that is, Ross Gow, which is Maxwell's press agent, Fred Graff, Robert Guthrie, Philip Guderian, no idea who that is, Alexander Hall, Joanna Harrison, Shannon Harrison, Victoria Hazel, Brittany Henderson, Brett Jaff, Forrest Jones, Sarah Kellen, that's Epstein's former assistant. Let's see, Carol Kess, Adriana Ross, I have read that, Dr. Stephen Olson, Stephen Kaufman, Wendy Lay, who is an author, Peter Listerman, Tom Lyons, Nadia Marcinkova, that's a friend of Epstein's, Bob Meister, Jamie Melanson, Donald Morell, David Mullen, which is a surprise, David Noor, Joe Pagano, May Paluga, Stanley Pottinger, a Detective Joe Rackere, that's a former Palm Beach police officer. Now, these are people who came into contact. That does not mean this police officer was involved in anything. It was just in his book of contacts. Chief Michael Ryder, responsible for the investigation of the sexual abuse, of course, against children. Ronaldo and Deborah Rizzo, they were husband and wife that worked for Epstein's alleged friend, Glenn Dubin. Sky Roberts, Kimberly Roberts, Lynn Roberts, Haley Robson, that was allegedly the named teen recruiter for Epstein. Dave Rogers, who was a pilot. Alfredo Rodriguez, who was a butler in Florida. Scott Rothenson, Forrest Sawyer, Doug Shotley, Cecilia Stein, Marianne Strong, Mark Tafoya, Emily Taylor, that is Maxwell's ex-personal assistant, Brett Tyndall, Kevin Thompson, Ed Tuttle, Les Wexner, who is the founder of L Brands, Abigail Wexner, who is the wife of Les Wexner, Crescenda Valdez, Emma Vagan, Anthony Valadares, Christina Venero, who is a licensed massage therapist, and she was named, I think, in some documents, Maritza Vasquez, Vicky Ward, who is an investigative journalist, who I was blocked, it says, from covering Epstein's misdeeds while she worked at Vanity Fair. Jared Weisfield, Sharon White, Courtney Wild, Daniel Wilson, Mark Zeff, who is a New York decorator, Kelly Spam, Alexander Dixon, Sharon, let's see, I already said some of these. Alfredo Rodriguez, who is Epstein's former household manager, Ricardo Legarreta, a Mexican designer, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Madonna, and Joe Biden. That is the full list. Now, we don't know, again, I want to make sure I make the largest disclaimer any person could ever make. We have no idea if this list is legitimate. And I definitely want to point out that on this list, even the person who posted the list made it very clear that these are contacts of Jeffrey Epstein. It does not mean that these people were involved with any of his shenanigans. It doesn't mean that any of these people did any wrongdoing. Some of these people who were in his list of contacts, the alleged list of contacts, were police officers that investigated the case against him. So it doesn't mean that these people are necessarily involved. It could be people he met at a party and had their contact information. It could be people, some of them that flew on his jet, that visited his island, that visited his homes, but there is no way, it doesn't give context to any of these people and how they're involved. And we have no way to know if, again, this is a real list. There's just no way to know. I just got an alert that there was a 2.4 magnitude earthquake in Richland, Missouri. That's extremely unusual. So I just felt that little buzz on my watch. So Kim says, not surprised by Michael Jackson. I don't know, Kim. I've thought about Michael Jackson, and I don't know that Michael Jackson was really the predator that we were led to believe. But I don't know. There's a lot of people who think that Michael Jackson was really trying to protect the kids from predators, the same predators that he encountered. And I don't know one direction or another. The only thing I've read and seen is that there was absolutely zero evidence that Michael Jackson ever harmed a kid, other than a couple kids coming forward, which of course witness accounts can be more important than any physical evidence found. So I don't know. But his name is definitely on this list that was posted on the dark web. But again, I don't know if any of this list is real, if it's not real. Some of those names on that list, surprising, some of them not surprising. But again, more importantly are the names that are not on that list, because everybody talks about Tom Hanks and his affiliation with Epstein. His name is not on that list. Donald Trump's name, not on that list. Some people that, again, surprising, Robert Kennedy Jr., if in fact we can trust the list, his name is on the list. Again, means nothing. We have no idea who these people are or what the context is. So who knows? But I did want to point that out, that list is floating around. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. I wanted to research it a little bit better before I just started throwing some names out there. So if in fact Donald Trump did say that kind of semi-privately that he will not release the names on the list because he feared a lot of innocent people, would be blamed for horrific crimes they didn't commit, I can understand that, because there's a lot of names that we just read that likely were just investigators or reporters or people he met at parties and so on. We'll probably never know. I know a lot of people want to believe that there's investigations still going on in the background and there's a big master plan to hold these people accountable, but that's not true, because those cases have already been dropped, and I don't expect them to pop back up again. So we'll see what happens. Now, if Donald Trump did make some deals with some various folks and those deals fall through, who knows? And we don't know what information Donald Trump had or Pam Bondi had. And again, we'll probably never know. I'm not sweeping it under the rug by any means. I'm just so frustrated with the situation that I feel like, what can we do anyway? What can we do? we can't go and raid the FBI office without getting shot, trying to get to these Epstein files. We could maybe believe, some of the information that's being released on the dark web, but how much can we really trust that? I could put a list together and dump it out on the dark web myself, and it would mean absolutely nothing. So who knows? Just I guess we have no choice but to move on from it. But one issue though that, and again, we're here to talk about the good stuff today, believe it or not. And maybe you'll see this as a positive, is that yesterday, we were pretty hot and fiery about Donald Trump stating that we're going to continue to send weapons to Ukraine. Well, we are going to continue to send weapons, artillery, Patriot defense systems to Ukraine. Now, allegedly, and I'm saying I shouldn't even say allegedly because this came out of Donald Trump's own mouth anymore. I hate to say it, I just don't believe what I read. Because, like I said yesterday, Donald Trump will say one thing, then Carol Levitt will say something else, and then the press will say something else entirely. And I don't know anymore who to believe. But generally, if it comes out of Donald Trump's mouth, it is the truth. So he made a deal yesterday with NATO so that NATO will pay for the weapons. So we are manufacturing, we're sending our weapons over to Ukraine. However, NATO is footing the bill. Now, does that make you feel any better about the situation? It's not coming out of your paycheck, your taxes. You're not paying for the weapons to go to Ukraine. I think makes me feel a little bit better about it, but at the same time, I don't want us to send anything to Ukraine. And what I don't understand from anybody's perspective is that even Donald Trump himself, which I think may have been a slip when he said this, was that had we and, of course, Europe not funded this war between Ukraine and Russia, it would have been over in 4 days. Why don't we just let it be over? Why do we keep trying to make a truce and go back and forth and, order a ceasefire when all we have to do is stop supplying Ukraine with weapons? It is that easy. We stop supplying them in weapons, and you know what? The war is over. Yes, Russia will keep the land that they already have, but Russia is not going to give up that land either way. They're not going to do it. Now, the best we can hope for is that we have a ceasefire and Russia stops where they are. They don't take any additional land, and that we just end it where it stands and everybody can go back home. And maybe some of these young men and women will live to see another day, because all that's going on over there now is just a slaughterhouse. Ukraine reported yesterday over 100,000 young men and women have been killed in this war. And I don't even know what the numbers are on the Russia side, but they're probably very similar. And I'll tell you what, it's very upsetting. Ruth says, I can't seem to post, but what you just said is what O'Reilly said. Oh, okay, Ruth. Are you talking about how I was saying that Donald Trump made the statement about how he won't release the list because he doesn't want to hurt innocent people? I didn't know who said that or who he was talking to. I belong to a group kind of on these dark web folks that talk about different things, so I don't always see the original source. So thank you for that, Ruth. And I think that's an important statement, is if that came from O'Reilly in a conversation between Donald Trump and O'Reilly, then that's probably the truth, that they don't want to post that list. But that doesn't mean they should close the case or stop investigating. So I feel like there's a lot more to it than just that statement. Yes, innocent people would be harmed by just giving out that list. Yes, true. However, why close the case? Why stop investigating? As I said earlier, we know, because it was announced on the news this morning, that the case against Prince Andrew is closed, as are all other investigative cases related to the Epstein files closed. Thank you, Sherry. This is another one of my flag shirts that I wore when I was out with America PAC in Georgia. And Dottie says, we pay with our taxes to belong to NATO. Dottie, I'm so glad you said that. Joe, Lynette, and directly, we are paying for it because we are members of NATO. And I'm going to talk about that. And Sherry says, I hope I can get the show in Norway. Are you going to Norway? I'm so jealous. Take me with you. And so, yes, we are, a portion of our GDP goes into NATO, as we fought so hard, didn't we? Donald Trump did, to make sure that all these other countries paid their fair share into NATO for what? So now we can take that money and turn it around and send that money to over to Ukraine for weapons. Let's end this war between Ukraine and Russia. Let's just stop sending them weapons. And when we stop sending them weapons, guess what? The war will end because they will not be able to defend themselves. The war will end. And I don't expect that any more people are going to be murdered than what's already happening as it is. And I hate it. I may not be in support of sending weapons to Ukraine, and I absolutely cannot stand that snake oil salesman comedian Zelensky, who, of course, is bought and paid for. We all know that, a puppet government. But I do feel for the people of Ukraine. I absolutely do. I do feel for the people of Russia as well, because they're all losing their sons and daughters, mostly sons, in a war that didn't have to happen. It did not have to happen. And some people want to blame Russia because Russia made the first move, but that's also not true. Russia did not make the first move. In fact, the Azov battalion, who are the true Nazis in Russia along that eastern edge, they made the first move. They've been firing on Russia for, at that time when the war started, 8 years. We go back to Mariupol and those poor people in Mariupol that Russia was attempting to liberate. Well, the Azov battalion, which later was in kind of indoctrinated into the official Ukrainian army, but that Azov battalion, they wear swastikas on their jackets, they wear them on their hats, and they had dug a trench all the way around the city of Mariupol. Mariupol is a largely Russian-speaking area, and those people, are Russian. And of course, the Azov battalion, they hate Russians. So they dug a trench all the way around the city of Mariupol, and they would not allow anyone to leave. And so these people were persecuted daily. They would go into the Russian-owned businesses and extort those people. And so Russia came to liberate those people and others like those. I am 100% on the side of Russia and their liberation efforts when the conflict first began. And then NATO and the United States under Joe Biden, we had to get involved to make sure the war continued. And that blood, like the blood of so many others before them, is on our hands directly. And it's very upsetting to me that we are continuing to send weapons to Ukraine, and it doesn't matter whether we pay for them or whether NATO pays for them. In the end, yes, it does come out of your tax dollars for that purpose. It's extremely, extremely upsetting to me. Extremely upsetting. So I wanted to jump into that. Lots of other things to talk about. I want to talk about some good things that's going on right now. We're going to talk about some good things, but I got a lot of other things to talk about too. Some of the things I'm going to talk about towards the end of the show is Brigitte Macron and how some folks lost or I should say their defamation case was dropped because allegedly maybe she really is a man. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the movie Superman before we head out. But we're going to talk about some good things first. And most importantly, at the end of the show, something that I want to discuss that I think is very important. I want to talk about a story about a little boy named Cason. And I don't know if you guys have heard this story or not. He was in a skateboarding accident, was in a little bit of a coma, and was unconscious. And he woke up and he saw Jesus and his father, who had passed away a year prior. So I want to talk about that. I've got a video of the entire moment. So I want to play that, and I'm going to share a personal story with you as well in regard to that. Yes, Sherry, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm going to play that video at the end of the show. I'm not going to play the whole 10-minute video. I did share the whole video to my Telegram page so that you can go out and view it later because it's about 10 minutes long. But I'm going to show you some of the most important moments of that video. And then I want to talk about that in length. So I'm going to get through some of this other stuff first. Some good things we've got going on. We keep saying, yes, Donald Trump has made some missteps. But like we said yesterday, and like I know you know in your heart, there is more good than bad. There are things going on that we don't like. We can only hope that those things were done in the best interest for the national security of our country. But there are some really fantastic things going on. If you saw the intro video, whenever we were coming into the show, it was a video that was released by ICE, and they talked about Molly Tibbetts at the very beginning. You saw a poster of Molly Tibbetts, of course, being, I followed that case very closely. She was out jogging and was kidnapped and murdered by somebody who was in our country illegally. And so that opened up with that poster about Molly Tibbetts, and then went on to show some ICE agents out. Not only that, but the FBI announced it has they have arrested at least, and this was the secretary of the DHS that came out and talked about this, at least 600, they said almost 600 terrorists, people who are known to either be active terrorists or are on the terror watch list or presumed to have terror ties. Almost 600, which is really, that's a pretty big number, quite honestly. When you think that the FBI estimates we have about 1,500 Iranian sleeper cells in our country. And of course, if we have 600 Iranian, we probably have thousands, of various Sunni groups who are here in our country and their sleeper cells. And we know terrorists came across our southern border completely undetected. And we've always said, well, if they catch 10, then that means another, probably 1,000 came through. So almost 600 arrests. And those folks, of course, will be deported. That was DHS's Tricia McLaughlin that made that statement along with the FBI. So that is a very good positive. I'm trying. There's a lot of positives out there. I don't want to focus on all the negative. And we had a 6.1 billion funded for new border agents. Think about that. So 6.1 billion going into border patrol. And out of that, 3,000 new border patrol agents. That's excellent. 5,000 CBP officers added, 200 air and marine agents. Think about that. $6.1 billion dedicated to securing our southern border. That is a win if I ever heard one. So that is absolutely fantastic. And I wanted to show some videos. Yesterday on the show, we talked about ICE and some of the ongoing threats that ICE has been facing. And last night, sure enough, remember we showed that video yesterday of the ICE agents, scuffling, literally scuffling with these anti-ICE protesters outside of an immigration court hearing. And, when you're hand to hand and you're in close contact like that, you don't know. What do these protesters have? Do they have knives? Do they have guns? We just don't know. Do they have biological agents? These days, I hate to say it, but it doesn't take much. They could have a little bit of fentanyl, poof it up into the air, and guess what? That's going to pretty much take care of a lot of people. Fentanyl is a very dangerous substance, and people can and could use it against us and against, of course, any type of agent. So when you're that close in proximity and you're scuffling around, you don't know what to expect. And then last night, I heard a report that some shots had been fired. At first, I heard in California, and then I think it was in Camarillo. And then again, that was in Ventura County. And then I heard later on some shots had been fired at another protest that was taking place somewhere in Texas. And it's becoming an increasingly violent situation. And I've just got some little snippets of some videos here of some of these encounters. And I'll tell you, it's crazy to think about that our ICE agents are facing these types of situations. These are various videos around California, Ventura County, Camarillo. I believe one is from San Francisco. So let's take a look here. Me and my buttons, sometimes it takes a minute.
This is happening at Wood and Laguna, and you now see the military vehicles advancing despite those protesters trying to make a stance and trying to stop the military vehicle from continuing on. And there's cameras rolling, cell phone cameras rolling.
These idiots.
And,
until they get ran over, they're not going to
really
stop.
Trying to get this military
They're just not going to stop. Here's another video. Look at these people. This is where allegedly there were shots fired. I cannot confirm that. You hear what sounded like shots in the background, but again, cannot confirm. think about that. Okay, these are Americans. These are Americans here in our streets. I don't know. Can we call them Americans? I guess they're Americans here in our streets. Most of them are Americans, by the way, because the non-Americans or people who are here in our country illegally are being told to stay away from these protests, and they don't need to be there because these other folks that pick up, born and bred Americans, are out there causing all the trouble. So we don't need anyone else to have to help them. And it got to the point yesterday where they were being tear gassed. We heard these reports of shots fired on two different occasions, once in Texas, once in California, in Ventura County. And again, I cannot confirm that the shots were fired. I don't believe there were any injuries, certainly no casualties. But this is a very dangerous situation. If we don't figure out a way to stop this right now, and I don't understand why we're not stopping it, quite honestly. That situation there in Ventura County, it got so out of control that the anti-ICE protesters had the group of ICE agents completely surrounded. They surrounded them, and they had to call in a helicopter to come in and resupply them because they ran out of supplies. That's how crazy things are getting. Now, what I would like to know is why this violence is not being shut down. And again, I'm not going against Donald Trump. I just want to know why the White House doesn't step in and say, enough already. One of my agents are going to get killed. Let's just stop this in its tracks. Because guess what? We already know it is not constitutional to protest in a violent manner. So there is no reason why these protests should be continuing. They're violent. Somebody, please explain to me why this is continuing, because I would really like to know why this is continuing. Why can't we find a way to round all of these people up who surrounded these ICE agents or who were scuffling with ICE agents the other day, in San Francisco, or these people in Camarillo? Why aren't we rounding them up? Why aren't we throwing them in the DC gulag like our J6ers? And why are these people ever seeing the light of day again? Because I'll tell you what, if a police officer came to my front door and I resisted arrest and I started scuffling with a police officer, I would probably be shot and killed. And I certainly would end up in prison for a very long time. But when it's in the name of a protest, all of a sudden you have the right to scuffle with police. You have the right to resist arrest. You have the right to, throw rocks and frozen water bottles and all this other stuff. I saw countless videos this past weekend of people slapping and punching these ICE agents. How is that allowed? And I did not see the officers step over the line and grab these people and arrest them. I saw a woman flat out backhanded slap one of these officers in the face. And he held the line. He didn't do anything. And maybe that's because they know that's what these people want. But I just don't understand why this is allowing it. Why is this continuing? Oh, it frustrates me to no end. I'm actually trying to talk about the good things, but I end up back with the bad things. Eric says it's continuing because they need an enemy to make them look like the good guys. I guess, Eric, but I don't understand why. Why can we not step up and get control of these violent protesters? I just don't understand it. We know where they are. We know where they're going to be. Bring a couple of buses, round them up, zip tie them, put them on the ground, throw them on the bus, put them in federal prison until they have a hearing. I just don't get it. And instead, we have all these no bail cities, no cash bail. So they go in, and then we don't even have to have Kamala Harris raise millions of dollars to get these people out anymore. They just round them up, a couple of them, take them off to jail, the worst offenders, and then they just turn around and release them. They're right back out protesting, probably later the same day. It's just so incredibly upsetting to me. We're going to end up with some officers being very seriously injured or killed. That's what's going to happen. And I guess we have to get to that point before we actually do something about it. I just don't understand. I don't understand. But again, there's a lot going on. I feel like I'm concentrating way too much on the bad when there really is so much good. Like I said earlier, 600, almost 600 folks in this country on the terror list, terror watch list, or supposed to have ties with terrorists arrested. They're going to be deported out of this country. Some of them may be arrested and not even able to leave. So we'll see where that goes. We know Donald Trump is working double time, overtime to fight violent crime on our city streets. We don't hear a lot about it, but there are these multi-agency task force. They're going out, they're picking up the most violent offenders on our city streets. They're making sure that these people that they have beds. These people are not just simply released on a no cash bail. They're held. They're going to be tried, hopefully convicted if they're guilty. So there is a lot going on. We know and we see these every day. What's interesting, you don't really see this posted as often as a headline because I guess nobody cares anymore. But we also have these multi agency task force out every single day while we're standing here walking. Somewhere out there, they are investigating and arresting these sexual predators. Every day I'm reading these stories about, 50 people arrested tied to human trafficking, 100 people arrested, hundreds. I would say at this point it's probably 1,000 or more children who have been rescued and returned back to either their family or at least into state care, kids that were being trafficked, kids that were missing, some of these very serious cases. There is a lot of good that's happening, a lot of good that's happening. And, as easy as it is to focus on the bad, because if you're like me, you get all riled up about the bad stuff because we want everything to be good. We want everything to be perfect. And, in a perfect world, I guess that might happen. But in this world, we're going to have to take the good and the bad. And, unfortunately, some of the bad has been heavy hitters, things that were very important to us. But the things that were also very important to us, like protecting children, these things are happening. I heard that Planned Parenthood is thinking about closing down hundreds of locations because they're not going to have the funding that they once had. And I've also heard that there's a institute in California that was one of their primary objectives was gender affirming care for minors, that they're closing down their services because they're not going to have the funding that they once had. So there are things that are happening that are good. There are things that are happening. Let's see here. Lori says police are too afraid to do their job. Society sides with the perpetrators. I know, Lori, I know. Just here locally in St. Louis, I see the same thing. I do. I see it posted in these different Facebook groups. Were like, oh, these kids were out shooting fireworks. Just let them be. Let them shoot fireworks. No, they were shooting fireworks at police vehicles. They broke the back window out of a police vehicle with a firework. They're jumping on cars, vandalizing businesses. No, they're not innocent kids out shooting off fireworks. And St. Louis City, boy, they have been at it, getting some of these troubled youth off the streets. But again, they're just releasing them to their parents. But they were able to find a lot of weapons, while they were tackling some of the violence associated with fireworks on that 4th of July weekend. So, there is good. I read that Andrew Bailey, Missouri's very own, of course, Attorney General, is seizing land that China bought in the state of Missouri. Another positive. There's a lot of really great things happening. We had the courts, this is kind of a tricky situation, but we did have the federal court siding, of course, with Donald Trump, saying that one judge cannot make a mandate for the entire country. Now, they're still trying to. There's actually a federal judge in California right now. I can't recall her last name. Her first name's Mamie, but she is going to do her best to try to stop ICE raids across the state of California. It's a process in the works. She's going to issue some type of injunction where she's going to tell ICE that they cannot make arrests, they cannot raid businesses, and so on. Well, good luck with that, Mamie, because we're not going to let that happen. We're going to continue doing the good things that we need to do. Now, on another note, I was reading this morning on the Daily Mail. I've read some good stuff on the Daily Mail, but you remember how we've talked lately a lot about Candace Owens and how she received, we're kind of seeing all this unfolding and coming full circle, where Candace Owens said, I played the video for you guys, several days ago, that Donald Trump's advisor called her and he wanted her to stop talking about Brigitte Macron. And at that time, she didn't really say much further about it than that. Just that she wanted they wanted her to quit making fun of her, quit talking about her. She didn't allude to what she was saying or anything like that, and that she found out that Donald Trump was on the line, listening and observing, what this conversation and how it went, and how she was told by Trump's advisor that Donald Trump is trying to make a deal with Macron to bring some peace, a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia, and that her continued talk about Brigitte Macron was upsetting Macron, and therefore he wouldn't make a deal with the United States. And in this situation with Russia trying to bring out a ceasefire. And I thought, well, that's the strangest conversation I've ever heard. I like Candace Owens, but why does she really matter in the grand scheme of things? Then the other day, and I talked about this to you guys as well, there was a doctor in, I can't recall where he was. I believe he was in France, somewhere in France, and he allegedly jumped to his death out of a very tall building. A lot of people were saying, no, he didn't jump, he was pushed. He was unalived by somebody who worked for Macron. And then it comes to find out, well, this doctor was the assistant to another doctor who is alleged to have completed the surgery, the I don't know what is it, the trans surgery on Brigitte Macron, and where she truly was a man, had the surgery by this doctor. This doctor that was killed and Candace Owens were allegedly they were going to create some kind of an interview, and Candace Owens was going to interview this doctor, or had already interviewed the doctor, to talk about Brigitte Macron. And they had photos and video of her when she was once a man. I saw some of what they had been working on, if in fact it is correct that they've been working on this. And it was pretty revealing, quite honestly. And then there were some people, a couple of women over in France, who had been talking about Brigitte Macron being a man, being the trans, and they were arrested. Well, the Daily Mail reported today, I saw it today, that those charges of defamation were dropped and that they were cleared of any charges of defamation. Kind of makes me wonder now, is it actually true? I really didn't think it was true. I thought, man, all these people are going down these rabbit holes with Brigitte Macron, and she looks like a woman to me, maybe not the most attractive woman, but she does look like a woman. But now I'm starting to think, well, maybe a lot of the stories we hear are actually true. So I don't know, but it's pretty interesting conversation. So we'll keep up on that and see how that goes. Does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? No, but I do wish that I had that video of Brigitte slapping Macron in the face before he got off the plane. I have the video. I just didn't think to load it today. And one thing I wanted to mention, I know heading into the weekend, I know kind of just go over some random things right now, but I'm going to be talking about, of course, little Cason seeing Jesus and his, deceased father here in just a minute. But I wanted to talk about Superman. People are going on and on. I saw talking about how Superman is woke. And, being in this film industry, I cannot talk about my work when it comes to films. I sign a lot of, NDAs. I just cannot disclose details. I can talk that I worked a movie, but I can't really say anything else. So I can't say if I liked a movie, if I didn't like a movie, but we are already finished with Superman. It opens this weekend, but I was watching a video between the two, some of the talent of the movie, and of course some interviewers, and they were saying how that where people are calling Superman woke. I'll tell you, there wasn't anything woke I saw in it. So before that rumor starts getting spread about this new Superman, there was nothing I saw in there at all that seemed woke to me. Nothing. I can't recall anything that was woke in that movie. So I don't know why people are spreading those rumors. But in fact, some of the talent from the film is coming out and saying, you know what, you need to come and see this movie because it perpetuates goodness. It goes to show that Superman, is very powerful, but he's on the streets, he's helping people, and it does give a good message of helping. And I think we all need to do a little bit better at helping the people in our community. I don't think we do enough. Like I said the other day, I've been seeing so many people lately, in person, things I'm seeing myself, mostly elderly people, at stores trying to decide again between medication and buying groceries and car repairs and we live in a crazy society right now. There's a lot of people who need our help. And I particularly worry about the elderly because they are a group I feel like kind of gets forgotten a lot. We see, I just watched a video this morning, which it was so disgusting. I'm not going to even play it here. It was a woman who has 9 kids. Maybe you've seen this video. She has 9 children. She makes videos for social media where she makes a lot of money on these videos. I don't know why she's getting SNAP benefits, but her entire motive for the show is that with her 9 kids, she gets thousands of dollars in SNAP benefits. So she goes to the grocery store and loads up all these carts of food, brings it home, and shows her cooking, which honestly, I didn't show you the video because the stuff she was cooking was so disgusting. It turned my stomach. I'm like, man, I cannot put that on the show. But what she was doing, I don't know. But she buys all this junk food, and to feed her kids. And now she just announced that she's having triplets. So she has 9 kids. Now she's having triplets, 3 more. She's already receiving thousands of dollars in SNAP benefits. Again, going to the grocery store, loading up her carts, which I get it. You have 9 kids, you got to load up your carts. I'm not going to condemn her for that, but she's making probably a lot of money on these videos and obviously living off the system when we have our elderly people who a lot of times, if they're on Social Security, they're not even qualifying for any type of SNAP food benefits. And I think we need to step up. I think we need to do a lot more to help the elderly. So the interview I saw about Superman kind of reminded me of that good message that we need to step up and do more. And any of us can. All you have to do is, there are senior centers in your neighborhood. You can go out into your community and talk to people, see what they need. We all know that there are certain houses in our area where somebody elderly lives. You don't know if they have family or not. Maybe their grass needs to be cut. Maybe they need a ride to a doctor or, get some necessities. Maybe they can't afford to have the snacks and little things we all take advantage of. So there are ways in which we can step up and start helping people in our communities. And I certainly think we need to do that. And so if you're out this weekend, go out to your local theater, support your local theater, and see Superman. And, lastly, the last thing I really want to talk about today. Oh, let's see. Larry says, did you hear they did a practice run sacrificing the red heifer in Israel? No, I don't know anything about that, Larry. I don't even know what that means, but I'm going to look that up and we can talk about that on Monday. I'm not sure what that means, but I will take a look at that. And I'm not sure who did the practice run, but I will look at that, Larry. I don't know anything about that. So before we leave, I want to talk about this situation very quickly. There was a little boy named Cason. Now, I'm not sure where Cason lives, but the backstory to this is I'm only going to play part of the video because it's about 10 minutes long. The backstory to Cason, he's a little boy. He was in a skateboarding accident. He was, I've heard, unconscious for 4 hours. Now, he wakes up, and when he wakes up, you can hear his mom and the nurses around, and he is looking up and ahead above him, and he's talking to Jesus, saying, Jesus, you look so beautiful. He sees his father. His father had passed away just a year prior to the skateboarding incident, and he had passed away of cancer. I'm getting chills even talking about this. Good morning, Phyllis. I'm getting chills talking about this. Now, what I want to tell you before you watch this video, I've been in this situation before, and some of you who know me or have listened to me over a period of time have heard me talk about this story. I absolutely know. I'm getting chills thinking about it, talking about it. I absolutely know exactly what this little boy saw because this happened to me. And so when you watch this, know that this little boy, he saw what he thinks he saw. And I know people are going to discredit him and say, oh, he was dreaming or he's on medication. But I'll tell you my story and I'll keep it as brief as I can. But several years ago, I don't know what happened to me, quite honestly. Just out of nowhere, I started having breathing problems. Never had a health problem, breathing problem before the year 2000. And then all of a sudden, I started coughing up blood and was having all these problems. And they thought I had a pulmonary embolism. I was in the hospital. Then after that, whatever happened during that instance, it damaged my lungs. It caused a lot of scar tissue and different things in my lungs. And I kind of had a hard time breathing after that. So after this incident happened to me, there was a time when I was having a really hard time breathing. I have inhalers and all these different things. I had completely exhausted my inhalers. Inhalers were no longer working for me. And I ended up in the emergency room in critical care. I was up in, if you know what some of these ICU rooms are like, and the one I was in, by the way, I was so out of it, quite honestly. I only know this after the fact. Going into there, I had no idea what was going on. When you're so short on oxygen, your brain's in another place. But I was in this room, and what did recall, I knew I was in there. I didn't realize there was a bed next to me to my right. But the nurse sat at a desk straight ahead on the wall. It was just your typical, probably maybe 14 by 14 room, two beds, curtain between the beds. The nurse sat against the wall between the two beds, but where I could see her from my bed. Now, I didn't really know a lot about what was going on again until right before I left the hospital, but I was there. They had this contraption on me. I was not on any medication other than albuterol and breathing medications. They were trying to give me an opportunity to get some oxygen in before they put me on a ventilator. And so I had this big mask on, and it was pumping, oxygen in and out through this thing. And I was completely out of it. But I know at one point, and I remember this as clear as day, clear as day. I remember looking up. I knew my mom was sitting at the foot of my bed next to where the nurse sat at her desk. I knew the nurse was there. That wasn't unusual. I did not know there was a person next to me in another bed. But I looked up and I saw these three men standing there at the end of the bed. And they had on uniforms. I don't know if it was it was a military uniform of some type. I don't know, World War II, World War I. They were old military uniforms. And they were standing there. They even had their weapons like at attention on their shoulder. And all three of them were just looking ahead. They were down towards the foot of my bed, but facing out. And like if my feet were here, they were facing out this way. And I looked up at them and I knew they were there to take someone. I just knew that's what they were there for. And I looked at them and I said, why are you here? Because I'm like, in my brain, I'm thinking, I'm not dying. Why are you here? And they didn't answer me, didn't acknowledge me, didn't look at me, nothing. But they were very clear as day there as any real person would be. And of course, the nurse and my mom freaked out. They're like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, I'm talking to these guys right here. And the nurse came over and asked me all these questions. And, who's president? It was Obama at the time. What year is it? What day is it? Why are you here? I knew all the answers to every single question they asked me. And they kind of freaked out a little bit. The nurse gave me something, I guess, and knocked me out. Well, when I woke up and kind of came to, my mom was really acting strange. The nurse was acting really strange. I knew something was going on, but I didn't know what. Well, I later learned that when I saw these three men standing by the foot of the bed, that there was a woman to the right of me, also in the same ICU. She was an elderly woman, and she had passed away right when I saw these three men. Or maybe before that, and they were waiting for somebody to get her. I don't really know, but either way, she passed away when I saw these three men. And I didn't learn until later. My mom said they didn't want to tell me that she was passed away because they didn't want to freak me out. So they were waiting for her family to come in, I guess, and look at her when I saw these three men. And I'll tell you, I don't know. I couldn't explain it to you myself. I'll never be able to explain it, but I know what I saw. I know those three men were there. I don't know who they were. I think they were probably maybe family members of her that were deceased. And I don't care if you think I'm crazy. It makes no difference to me. I know what I saw. I will never change my mind. And when you see something like this, it changes your life, because I knew in that moment, I didn't know that woman was there. I didn't know she passed on, but I knew what I saw with these three men, and I knew that they were there to take someone. So I will always believe that before you pass away, your loved ones come to greet you. And maybe angels, maybe Jesus, maybe God. But I know in my heart that before you pass away, you are not alone. Your family is there with you. And this woman, had I been able to talk to her before she passed away, she would have probably known who these men were. I, of course, did not know. So when I saw this story about little Cason, I thought, man, I get it. I was in this situation. I get it. I'm going to show you his video. It's 10 minutes long. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'll play enough for you to see the importance, and then you can watch the entire video elsewhere. Let's see.
Yeah. Nice deep breath. Yeah. You're okay.
I'm sorry.
Why?
I'm a bad kid.
No, you're not.
You're not a bad kid,
I
Cason.
cause trouble.
No, you don't.
You just skateboard.
Deep
I
breath,
love
but-
my mom. I miss my mom. Where's my mom?
I'm right here.
I miss my
I'm
mom.
right here, Cason. Cason.
Hi, Jesus. You're so beautiful.
He's in a dream. He's dreaming.
I want this hot chicken.
I think your mama will get you some.
Yeah.
Jesus, when you coming back? We need you. I need you.
Oh my God.
I miss you, Jesus. I miss you. Dad, you're so pretty. Hi, Dad. Do you see me skateboarding?
His dad passed away a year ago.
Oh my God.
You're so pretty. You're so pretty.
It's okay.
Mom loves you, Dad. She tells you all the time. I love Mom and Mom loves you, Dad. I love Mom. My mom's the best. She's the best mom ever.
You're doing so good, Cason.
But that's not my name.
Oh,
My name is Brian.
Brian. My name is Brian.
Hi, Dad.
Okay, bud.
You're so beautiful. Oh, you're so beautiful. You have so beautiful hair. Dad, you're so beautiful. I can't wait to see you. Can you give me a hug? Dad, I'm sorry, Dad. I'll treat Mom better. I'll try.
All right. I shared that video on my Telegram page. I will share it later to Facebook. I'm sure there's a lot of places out there where you can go and see this video, and it's very touching. And you know, what's interesting about it is at the beginning of the video, the mom, the nurses, everybody's laughing, you know, but you can tell this kid, he's not even aware that his mom is there. This kid is on another plane altogether. And, you know, and I don't know the extent of his injuries. I don't know what kind of medications he was on. But this kid, I was there. I know exactly how he feels. I know exactly what he's seeing to some degree. I did not see Jesus, but I know, I get it. You're just in this weird state. I don't even know how to describe it. And maybe there are people out there who can put themselves in this state and they see things and, you know, come out and talk about it. But I know in my situation, I was not on any medication at all other than like albuterol, trying to keep my airways open before they put me on a ventilator. And in this kid's case, I don't know the full, you know, health situation, but you can tell by the look on his face, he's not there. He doesn't know his mom's there. He does not know. He's in this weird plane that somehow we enter. I don't know how we do it or how we get in this plane of existence, but that's where this kid is. Now, why he thinks his name is Brian and how that's relevant, I don't know. But I absolutely do believe this kid sees his father and he sees Jesus and he's having this moment of spirituality where he's in those planes between life and death. And a lot of people I know are very skeptical about this type of thing. And I understand it. I was too, and would have been had I not been there myself. And I know what I saw was as real can be. Dottie says, I wonder why he said his name was Brian. Dottie, I don't know. I don't know. I've thought about that a lot. And then the only thing I can think of is that, a lot of people think that we have a different existence other than just this life. And that in that existence, we may not have the same physical name that we have here, in our earthly being. So maybe that was an angelic name, or maybe that was a soul name. I don't know. Whenever I saw what I saw, it wasn't really that extensive, and it didn't last for more than, a few minutes. So I don't know, but I absolutely believe this kid. And I think that if you continue to watch the video, I think his mom and everybody around him starts to understand, that what he's seeing is really what he's seeing. I knew instantly, because I saw, I felt the same way. I was kind of like dazed out, and just in a completely different plane of existence. And I remember it just like it happened yesterday. And this kid will remember it too. And when you see something like this and you experience this, it changes everything. It changes everything. Like, I know you could never convince me that there isn't a heaven and there isn't a God and there isn't a Jesus. You could never convince me of it. I know that when we pass along, we're not alone, that our family members or somebody, angels, Jesus, somebody is there with us. And I'm kind of glad that, I had the experience, because when my son's father passed away from COVID, I know a lot of you know that. And when he was in the hospital, of course, you can't go back and see people. They allowed my son back there, just prior to his death, but just a couple hours before he passed away, even though he was, on this respirator ventilator machine, he was still very aware and conscious. They didn't knock everybody out and sedate everybody just because they were, on this ventilation system. And he and I were texting back and forth. And you're probably thinking that's not possible. You can't text, but yes, it is possible. And he actually sent me a picture of himself with the mask and the setup on. And I told him, at this time, I never in a million years would have thought he would have passed away. Never, never. I'm still in disbelief over it. He's only 54 years old, and I was in good health. It was really strange, but I told him, I said, don't be scared. I said, you're going to be okay. But just remember that you may not see it, but your family is around you. He had lost his mother to cancer several years before, his sister at a very young age to an aneurysm, and his father to diabetes. And I told him, just know, you may feel alone, but you're not alone. Your family is surrounding you right now, even though you don't see them. And I'm so glad I said that to him and talked to him about that, because he went straight downhill after that, and passed away, and was a really horrific situation. And I wish more people understood. And yes, let's see here. Sorry, I'm going to go up and read some of the comments that I missed. Dottie says maybe a previous life. Maybe. There's a lot of people who do believe that we come back and continue to learn lessons until we have reached a certain extent where we have learned and contributed all we need to contribute. Sandy, I know, it got me too. I had chills. I almost cried. I still have chills. Tammy says, wow, I'm at work and this brought tears to my eyes. Me too. I got hiccups for some reason. I'm going to have to watch the full video. God bless this sweet boy. And Nancy says, I seen my grandma and I was healthy. Yeah, Nancy, because you know what? They're there. I don't know how to explain it. I don't care if people think I'm kooky or not, but I don't know. Most of us don't exist in that plane in which we can see other beings. Maybe it's our loved ones. Maybe it's Jesus. Maybe it's God. But I can tell you, you are surrounded by them all the time. You don't see them. You may not feel them, but it's there. And let's see here. And Dottie says, run, death is near. And Phyllis says, he was in the realm of the spirit. Remember, heaven is for real. Colton Burpo, he was Ed, not to heaven. I didn't know that, Phyllis. I'll have to go back, and I do remember that story. I'll have to go back and look at that. And so, yes, he went to heaven. And I'll tell you, people are in different planes of existence. When it happened to me, I didn't go to heaven. I didn't leave my body. None of that stuff happened. I mean, I don't even, I think I was probably in pretty bad shape. I don't know how near death I was, but I was definitely in bad shape. But I think I was just in that realm somehow, that spirit realm, to where I saw these three individuals who were there. And I'll tell you what, had the woman next to me not passed away, before or at the same time I saw these three individuals, I would probably wouldn't have the feeling, that I have now. But when you see that and it correlates with someone's passing, then you know what you saw, you know what the meaning is behind it. And I wish that more of us could go out and preach what we've seen and what we've experienced so other people would understand. The world is a fairly lonely place for a lot of people, and there's a lot of people who are terrified of death. And I don't want to die. I don't want to leave this world. I don't want to leave my family. But I also know there's a lot more out there. Life is not about what we experience on this earth. Life is about what we experience after we have passed from this earth. We live to die. We're here. We have to do our best job while we're here. And I think a lot of us, including myself, could be doing a lot more. And I really do wish there were people out there who could travel around and talk to people and say, hey, this is what I experienced, this is what I saw, and make people, understand that there is more to life, that this isn't just it. I think we have so many people, soulless people walking around in society these days who don't believe in Jesus, they don't believe in God, they don't have any type of faith system at all, and they really think that whenever they die, that's it. They're going in the ground and that's it. I know when I have two brothers that passed away, and I think both of them were believers. I think they both, went on to heaven, and were both good people. And I know when my brother Michael passed away, I was holding his arm, when he passed on, and I looked around the room because I'm like, I know I don't see family in the room, but I know he did. I know he did. And I know that they were there for him. I couldn't see him, but I looked around because I'm like, I know they're here. And then when my stepfather passed away in the room next to me where I'm standing right now, same situation, I had my hand on his arm, and I knew that his family, I knew that Jesus was there to greet him. And I feel that's very comforting to know that when your loved one passes on, as hard as it is, there is someone there with them. They are not alone. That's why you hear so many stories about people reaching out, to people, or they see, before my grandfather passed away, he kept seeing his family out in the hallway. He would see him out there, and he would tell stories that I had never heard before, things that he probably didn't remember since he was a child. Your body goes through something, and it's very spiritual. And I hope people believe. Sandy says, you've had a few of these experiences, right? Wasn't there one with your mom that she witnessed too? Yeah, that was Sandy. That was a different kind of story, but yes. Phyllis says, heaven is for real. You better believe it. And so, Sandy, yeah, my mom and I were driving one time down the highway. And I'm going to tell you a different story too. This is a new one that I haven't told anyone yet. But my mom and I were driving down the highway. We had both worked an anti piracy shift out in Springfield, Missouri, and we were on our drive home, and it was late, about 11 o'clock. We were driving down the highway. There was a car somewhere behind us, but there was nobody in front of us. And so we're driving, and where we were, there was 3 lanes of traffic. It was very dark in this general area, and we just were probably about 40 minutes outside of Springfield, Missouri, heading back. And I just looked up and I saw something by the median of the highway. And I said, watch out. I'm like, there's somebody over there. And I mean, this all happened in a split second. And just when I said that, my mom's like, oh my God, this guy walked out right in front of our car. I mean, we were going, 60, 70 miles an hour down the highway. This guy walked out. He was going in slow motion, where he was wearing khaki pants, I'll never forget, and a plaid shirt and a cap of some type. He walked out, and if you can imagine, you're driving down the highway 60, 70 miles per hour, and somebody's walking slow motion across your lane while you're driving. And when he got to the center of the car, he just turned and looked at us. And then it looked like he just made it past the car by like a millimeter. I thought for sure we hit and killed this guy. There was no doubt in my mind. There was no way we didn't hit this guy. We're going 70 miles an hour. He's very slowly walking across the road again, looking right at us, dead at us. Real as could be. I called 911. I didn't see anyone. There was no thump, no boom, nothing like that. I called 911 and reported it. I said, I think we hit someone. I gave them the mile marker number, and my mom and I were completely freaked out by it. Didn't see anyone. Police didn't find anyone. But I'll tell you what, I'll never forget it. We know what we saw. We'll never forget it. It wasn't a real person. How it's not a real person, I'll never know. But man, there's some stuff going on out there. Simon said, agree, Tabitha, this is deep, but should be the norm. Heaven is real, 100%. Yes, it is. And I wish more people knew and understand that, because I think if people understood that heaven is real and that Jesus is real, that God is real, that there is something beyond what we experience here on this earth, I think some people would lead a very different life than what they're leading right now. That we wouldn't have the drug addiction, the alcoholism, especially, me, I had my brothers passed away, one from both kind of a drug addiction, alcoholism, the other one from alcoholism. And so we've really felt it, in my family. And I think that if people had a stronger faith system, if they had some way to know that what they're seeing and what's out there is real. But some people, they don't know it unless they experience it themselves. If you don't experience it yourself, sometimes you just don't have that faith. And I wish there was a way to show these people faith. I think the world would be a very different place. There's too many people running around who have no belief system at all. Therefore, they feel that they can hurt people, harm people, talk badly to people, be mean to people, hurt themselves, hurt the ones around them, because there is nothing more to life. There's no reason not to do those things. And I'm the opposite of that. I absolutely believe in karma. I think karma is a spiritual type of thing. The energy you put out is the energy that comes back to you, and that's through Jesus. And a lot of people think, oh, it's karma, it's earth energy, whatever. No, that's Jesus energy. What you put out comes back to you. And Tammy says a lot of people have to actually see something or hear an actual account to believe it. They have no faith, or they haven't been exposed to spirituality. Very true. Sad but true. My mom died with my siblings around her, and she opened her eyes and reached out to someone. It was amazing. And I love that I had that experience. And I do too, Tammy. And like I do, when you see it with your own eyes, you know what your mother saw. I'm getting chills thinking about it. She saw her loved ones, or she saw Jesus, or she saw the bright light. There was something there that she saw. And Peggy says the devil is real, and the devil is real too. And you hear those accounts. You do. You hear those accounts where people do die for a couple moments or end up in the spiritual plane. And what they see is not Jesus. It's not their family. It's demons and other darkness. So the devil is definitely real. Phyllis says you reap what you sow. Yes, you most certainly do. I would love to talk about this more, but I've only got a couple more minutes. And Phyllis says we all should be the light for Jesus. You got that right, Phyllis. We all have to do our best. And that's why I'm talking about it. I know there's a lot of people who are going to think I'm crazy and kooky. I honestly don't care. That's why I'm doing a podcast. I don't care what anybody thinks. I am me, and it is an experience I had. And I'll tell you another experience that I've had recently, and there's not really a whole lot more to say. It's not happening anymore. But a lot of people know that my brother and I, my mom helped out, a bunch of us were caretakers, for my stepfather before he passed away. He lived here in the house. In the room next to where I'm standing actually was his bedroom. And he passed away in that bedroom. And he was 89 years old. And, he was just getting a teensy touch of dementia. But generally, he just passed away from old age. And he was also mostly paralyzed other than his left arm. And there at the end, he was starting to lose that ability of that left arm as well from a neck injury and a stenosis, just a degenerative condition. Well, my stepfather was the most spiritual person I've ever met. Most spiritual. If there was ever a man to go to heaven, he would be the one welcomed at the pearly gates. I couldn't speak of a person more highly than what I speak of him. And so there was no doubt to me that he was welcomed, by Jesus instantaneously. And I'll tell you something that's interesting about this is that I kind of some weird things were happening after he passed away, and he wouldn't be the type of person to haunt. So I don't think that's the situation. But I think that I don't fully grasp what happened quite yet. And I haven't talked to anybody about it because I just simply haven't had time. But after he passed away, a lot of strange things started happening in the house. Now, nothing's happened recently, and I don't know if it was him or his spirit, or maybe the only thing I could think is, man, we grieved so hard, after losing my brothers and my son's father, and it was just like, oh my God, how much more can the human soul handle? And then losing my stepfather, who'd been my stepfather since I was 6 years old, very difficult situation. There was some very heavy grieving that was taking place, here in the house. And I don't know if that grieving allowed some other spirit to enter, maybe. I can't imagine my stepfather, he would have been straight to the pearly gates, not hanging out around the house. But right after he passed away, some very strange things were happening. One was that I went to use my phone to call his sister. She lives in New Jersey and was not able to come out. She's in bad health herself. And I wanted to call her. I got her phone number on my phone. I couldn't dial it. I tried to dial her number 15 times, every single time. Call failed, call failed, call failed. I could not call her. And I kept thinking, man, maybe he doesn't, want me to tell her. I didn't know. I don't understand. I'll never understand what exactly happened in the days after he passed away. But some strange things did happen. The lights started flickering, the TVs were coming on and off. Gosh, my brother and I were sitting in the sunroom. My headset fell off the table. A paint can fell off a chair. A clock fell off the wall. There was some stuff that was going on, and I don't know how to describe it. My mom was here, sleeping, and she said that she woke up in the middle of the night and she heard like a scratching on her bed, and something poked her like in the ribs, and it completely freaked her out. There was a lot of weird stuff going on, in the 2 to 3 weeks after he passed away. And I don't think it was him. I didn't feel like it was him. I felt like it was something entirely different, and I don't know what it was or what was going on. I haven't heard or seen anything since, but I'll tell you what, those couple of weeks that were freaking me out, because I've lived in this house for about 3 years now, never felt any kind of anything spiritual here prior to that. Never heard any weird noises. Nothing ever happened out of the ordinary. But as soon as he passed away, man, everything was just crazy. It was crazy. I don't even know how to describe how crazy it was. You'd just be sitting there and the TV would come on, or you'd be watching TV and the TV would turn off. It would turn on and off. Our cell phones wouldn't work, just weird stuff happening. I don't know how to describe it. I don't. I'll never know. Whatever it is isn't happening anymore. At least it hasn't. I hope it doesn't. Yesterday, I was sitting here and like some papers moved next to me. That kind of freaked me out. But I don't know. The spiritual world is something that I don't think any of us fully understand, and we won't understand probably. Sandy says, "Has your son had any experiences?" Sandy, not that I'm aware of. And thank you, Sandy. I'm glad you believe me, because I'll tell you, it's not easy to talk about this stuff because we all fear that we're going to sound crazy or that we're going to lose credibility by talking about these types of things. But at the same time, that's life. A lot of people that I talk to have experienced different things that they cannot explain. And I don't understand it any more than the next person. And my son, as far as I know, has never experienced anything. I've talked to him a little bit about it, especially after his dad, passed away, and he had nothing to offer. And I think had he seen something or anything happened, he would have said something about it. But I don't know, and remember Betty White used to say it was the secret, I think is how she referred to it. She always wanted to know about the secret, what happens after we pass on. And I don't think any of us know, but it worries me that too many people think that nothing happens. So that's our jobs, to talk about it and share our stories. And I'd like to interview some people down the road, like separately from this show, have some separate interviews with people who have seen different things to get a feeling for how they feel and what they saw, and bring some light to their experiences, because there's some very normal people out there who've experienced a lot of different things. And if you talk to somebody who's worked in hospice or nursing homes or this and that, hospitals, they will tell you that these are very common occurrences, that when, oops, I lost my headset, that when people pass away, that they are reaching out or talking to someone that's not there. Before my grandmother passed away, also passing away of, just old age, she was, 92. And she also, a couple months before she passed away, started seeing things. There was a woman that would come into her room, she would say, and she described it, very clearly. It was a woman in a blue dress with beads, but she couldn't describe her face. And the woman would sit down next to her on the bed and she would say, well, if she was any closer, she'd be in the bed with me. And she would sit on the edge of the bed of my grandma's bed, but she would have her back to her. So she couldn't see the woman's face. But she saw it, clearly. She talked about this woman, fairly often that she saw this woman. And, the only thing that we could determine is that my mom said my great grandma had a blue dress and wore beads. So maybe it was her, visiting. I know before my grandma passed away, I've had enough loss around me to kind of see the signs. And I think before somebody passes away, you are warned to expect something to happen. Before my son's dad passed away, I had a dream. In the middle of the dream, people were shouting at me, just shouting at me, be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. It was like 100 people yelling at me at once. I woke up. I even talked about it on the show that day. And I kept thinking, what am I supposed to be prepared for? But I knew something was coming. Before, my grandma passed away, I remember the lights in her house flashing all the time. And I thought, man, somebody's going to pass away. I don't know who, but something's going on. Somebody's trying to give us a message. And the same thing happened before my stepfather, passed away. I'm like, man, somebody's trying to give us a message. They're trying to tell us to get prepared. And I think that happens. I think that people, there's a world around us we don't see, a plane of existence we don't see, but it's there. It's very spiritual and it's there and they're guiding us whether we know it or not. And I think some of that guidance is trying to prepare us. We just have to know what to look for and what the signs are. And I don't know why it's often involves electricity. Maybe that's something that can be manipulated, a little bit better, by spirits. I don't know. But I do have to run because I have to run to work. But I would love to talk about this a lot more, maybe on a separate show. And Pam says I can relate with everything you're saying. Simon, some people can have spirit attachments, and when they pass, these spirits have nowhere to go. So they remain in the house for a time. Also, experiencing heavy grief for an extended time can invite dark energies. That's kind of, Simon, I just got chills when you said that because that's exactly what I feel maybe happened. It was that we were just so deep in our grief, so deep in that grief. Just the loss of, having lost my brothers and my grandma and my grandpa, and then my stepfather. I think we were just all as broken as a broken people can be, and just completely heartbroken. And I think it did invite something in. Whatever that was, I believe is gone now. So it's always best to get through it and break through it and come to peace with the passing of that loved one. Don't doubt your experiences. God is definitely with you. Thank you for that, Simon. And I'm with you 100%. I think that grief, it opens up something that we don't understand, and it brings something in with it that we don't understand. All right. Well, that's a phone ringing, but it's not my phone because here's my phone. So the weirdness continues. But either way, I have to get to work, and I will see you all on Monday. I hope you guys all have a really great weekend. Somebody's phone must be around. I don't know whose phone it would be because look, here's my phone. My phone's not ringing. I don't know what's happening. But either way, I don't know. There might be a video player or something over there. But I hope you guys have a really good day. I will look forward to seeing you on Monday. Please stay cool today because it is really hot outside. Heat indexes are supposed to be over 100 degrees. So please do your best to stay cool. Pam says I had a red bird screaming at my front door. Me too, Pam. Me too. For weeks before everyone in my family had some bad events take place, I learned to pay attention. I just got chills from that, Pam. I know I'm going to end the show, but I'll tell you what, the same thing happened to me. The same thing. My mom and I talked about it. We had this red cardinal, the brightest red cardinal I'd ever seen, that she'd ever seen, sitting outside the front window for days, just like looking at us and tweeting and stuff. And I'm like, man, I know that's a sign of something, but I never know what it's a sign of. Is it our loved one, talking through the bird? Who knows? I don't know. I don't understand it. But I do believe in signs, and I do believe that is a sign. Sandy says, take care of yourself. Have a wonderful weekend. You guys also, again, stay cool. Going to be awfully hot. Thank you, Rob. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I will look forward to talking to you all on Monday. Have a good week. We will talk to you soon. You know what, Phyllis? We will absolutely do a separate show on this topic, maybe on a weekend when we can have everybody kind of focus in. And I've got a way I can bring people in if anybody wants to come in and talk. All you got to do is let me know. It's as easy as me sending you a link by email. You pull up the link, you'll be on video, and you can talk to us about your experience. If that's something you want to do, please, 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 please contact me. I would love to talk to you about it. And hope you guys again have a great weekend. Look forward to seeing you.